Sounds good. Well, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Alejandra Cano and I'm a student board member of the International Society for Ecological Economics and a PhD candidate at the University of California, Davis. Today we are honored to host Mazin Qumsiyeh, a Palestinian scientist, author, and educator. Dr. Qumsiyeh is the founder and director of the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability at the Bethlehem University, where he works on biodiversity conservation, environmental education, and the protection of ecological heritage in Palestine. His work spans zoology, conservation biology, and environmental justice. And he has written extensively on the relationships between ecosystems, culture, and political conditions in the region. His talk today will explore ecocide on the Palestinian landscape and the environmental impacts of this conflict. Dr. Qumsiyeh, thank you for being here, and I pass it to you.
Thank you very much. I'll share my slides and so I'll try to be very brief so that we have a lot of time for discussion. So excuse me if I'll go rather fast on these things. My background, in addition to being in ecology, biodiversity, biology, basically, my background also includes medical genetics. And in medicine, we say you take a patient history, you take the symptoms, you make diagnosis, then you offer the patient therapy, number 4, and then you tell the patient the prognosis. I think you can apply this to everything on Earth, including the ailing planet that we have with climate change. You take a patient history, you take the symptoms, you make the right diagnosis, what caused this problem, and then you try to address it. So what is, if I talk just limited to Palestine as a case study, if you want, what is this Palestine? Where does it occur? It's a very important geographic area. It's where humans migrated out of Africa to the rest of the world. It's a land bridge between Africa and Eurasia, and even birds migrate from Europe and Asia to Africa annually. And we just have the bird migration season. The last report I read is that Israel shut down 15,000 birds that are migrating because they thought they were drones coming from Iran. And this is from an Israeli source. They cannot distinguish a drone from a pelican or a stork. So anyways, that's what we have. Palestine is also important because it's part of the Fertile Crescent, the western part of the Fertile Crescent, where humans first transitioned from hunting, gathering to basically farming and pastoralism and domesticating things like, plants like wheat and barley and lentils and chickpeas and olives. This all happened in Palestine and the Fertile Crescent in general, but also domesticating animals. And this allowed for what's called the beginning of civilizations. Hence, the Fertile Crescent is also called the cradle of civilizations. This happened about 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. This is who the patient is and the patient age, if you want. Who are the people of Palestine? They are these indigenous people, my ancestors, myself. But also Palestine is important because it's a crossroad of civilizations and of people and cultures and religions. It's considered holy by 2.4 billion Christians in the world, 2 billion Muslims in the world, 16 million Jews, plus some others, of course, smaller like Baha'i and Samaritans and Druze and so forth. This is a picture in Palestine, 1932, of religious and secular leaders getting together to object to the idea of a Jewish state and the Balfour Declaration of forming a Jewish state in Palestine. Why would they object to this idea? Why do I object to this idea? It's very simple. It's obvious from the picture. Palestine was multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, even multilingual before 1948. There were 44 languages spoken before 1948 here. And we object to the idea of transforming it to a Jewish state with one language, one culture, one religion, a monolithic society. That, of course, entailed the ethnic cleansing of our people. And that's indeed what happened. 530 Palestinian villages and towns were depopulated in 1948 to 1950. But this process didn't stop in that period. This Nakba is ongoing. If you want more detail, you can read Ilan Pape's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, because Israel is doing ethnic cleansing even as we speak. Israel is destroying homes and kicking people out of their homes and lands. Not just in Palestine like the West Bank and Gaza, but or the Galilee or the Naqab, the Negev, but also in Lebanon, in Syria, and in other places. This didn't happen suddenly. In other words, it continues to happen. Shrinking Palestine, if you want, where the indigenous people are left, those who are left, that not the refugees that are outside the country, but those who are left inside the country, are left in Bantustans or ghettos, increasingly shrinking. This shrinking map of Palestine was actually drawn by my son, who lives in San Francisco, when he was 13 years old in 1998. And he drew it because he saw, as a middle school student, he saw this map of shrinking United States at the bottom. So he asked me if that's what happened in this country, and I said yes. And he said, shouldn't you draw a map like this? I said, no, shouldn't you draw a map like this? So he drew it. This is what we call colonialism. And I don't want to belabor the symptoms too much of colonialism. You all are very familiar with it. Every country on earth, including all the countries that you come from, all of you have had colonialism to various extents and various degrees. And some countries were both colonizers and colonized. For example, Spain was colonized by the Moors and then became a large colonizing country. And you know the symptoms of these aspects of colonization, the vilification of the indigenous people, calling them terrorists, savages, barbarians, whatever, and that we are bringing this beauty, culture, manifest destiny, shiny city on a hill, all of this stuff. The symptoms are too many to talk about. The killings, for example, the genocide. We had over 500,000 Palestinians killed since 1948. Over 1 million have been injured, and about 1 million have been detained and imprisoned, including yours truly. So these symptoms are too many to go through. The issue that I want to talk about is the ecocide. But there are other, besides the genocide, there's scholasticide, like destruction of the universities. Essentially, all our educational higher education institutes in the Gaza Strip, 12 of them were damaged or destroyed. That's a scholasticide. There's a veriticide destruction of the truth. 250 journalists have been killed in the past 2.5 years only, and that's more journalists killed in 2.5 years in one place than all the journalists killed in the 100 years before that in all the wars on all the rest of the planet, World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, etc., Iraq War. Now we come to the issue of the ecocide. The ecocide, of course, is a word coined for the damage that humans do to the environment, analogous to genocide, killing our environment, basically. It was coined by people related to industrial damage for our environment. And now, of course, we can speak endlessly about ecocide. There's a whole body of literature about it. And what are the damage that humans do to the environment, ranging from climate change to habitat destruction, pollution, overexploitation, invasive species. The area that I want to focus on, of course, is settler colonialism. And settler colonialism transcends all of these, includes all of these, actually. For example, if I take climate change, actually, alone, you can see how settler colonialism impacts the environment. For example, in the war that Israel conducted with the help of the United States, bombing 8 countries in the past 2.5 years, jet fuels alone produced more greenhouse gases just from the jet fuel alone. Produced more greenhouse gases than most European countries produced in the same period of time from all their sources. All their sources, that's industries, automobiles, kitchens, etc. So obviously war is a climate change issue, and I could go on endlessly about this, but I want to show you a few examples. When I mentioned that they destroyed 530 Palestinian communities, ethnically cleansed us from our land, so that now there's 8.5 million Palestinian refugees. Well, they destroyed not just the houses of those people and kicked them out and killed many of them, of course, with massacres, but they also destroyed the trees around these places, around these villages. Palestine was never a desert, by the way. Palestine, as I mentioned, was part of the Fertile Crescent, very rich area. So when Israel bulldozed the houses, they also bulldozed the trees that are around these houses, whether wild trees or domestic trees. And they planted only one kind of tree, which is pine tree, Pinus halepensis, basically, a monoculture, because it gave the country a European look, etc. But the problem with pine trees and monoculture, of course, is it's very damaging to biological diversity. And also pine trees in a dry climate like ours are susceptible to fires. And you can see here fire in West Jerusalem, for example, from a year and a half ago. And this destroyed the pine trees, exposed the terraces that Palestinians have built over thousands of years, and had other kinds of trees that were diverse trees that are more resilient and resistant to these kinds of damages. This is a hill next to us here called Jabal Abu Ghneim. In 1997, what it looked like is on the top, and what it looks like at the bottom is a few years later as it became a Jewish-only colony. And we in the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability actually studied the impact of these kinds of things. So we studied decline in vertebrate biodiversity in Bethlehem, etc. This is in Bethlehem. This was the only forested area between Bethlehem and Jerusalem, actually. This destruction of our environment is ongoing as we speak. Even today, they uprooted olive trees and fig trees and almond trees, and people try to cling to their land and their nature. The other things that the colonizers do, as they did in North America and South America and Australia, all these countries, is alter the landscape and try to reshape it in whatever the vision they have of a Europeanized country. In our case, for example, they drained the wetlands of the Hula area, including Lake Hula, which was very important for migrating birds and another local indigenous fauna. Indigenous fauna, 219 species in Lake Hula and the surrounding areas disappeared as a result of this mega project. Another mega project is a diversion of the water of the Jordan River Basin, which you see here on the map on the left. This dried up the Jordan River Basin. You can see even in satellite images how desertification is spreading in this area. And the Jordan River itself, which used to flow, as you see here in the old picture and the new picture, used to flow at 1,350 million cubic meters, now flows at 20 million cubic meters. That's barely a stream, by the way, at 20 million cubic meters per year. You can walk across it. It's no wider than the stretch of my hands, basically, in the southern part of it. So it's no longer a river, it's a polluted stream, and the habitat is gone, destroyed, finished, basically. This is not because colonizers need these natural resources like water. No, actually, it's because they want to deny these natural resources to the indigenous people, to the native people. This illustrates this clearly. Ramallah, actually, just north of here, about 20 kilometers north of here, has more rainfall than London, but our water is stolen from us to deprive the water to the local Palestinians, give some of it to the colonial settlers, but a lot of it is undiscarded even into the Mediterranean, just so that they can deny it to the local people. That's typical of colonizers. You have to follow where the natural resources are and stuff like that. Gaza, the reason Gaza is besieged and have undergone a genocide, the scholasticide and ecocide, is because of the rich gas fields off of the coast of Gaza that Israel is now using and exporting to Europe, polluting also the Eastern Mediterranean region with the bombing in Gaza and all of this stuff. This is from a study we did with remote sensing, experts from 5 countries. I was one of them from Palestine. I'm not a remote sensing expert. I was in charge of local validation of the data that they produced by remote sensing. This is the image on the right, shows month by month since October 2023 to September 24, the destruction of tree cover in Gaza. And the graph on the lower left-hand corner shows the cumulative damage of tree cover. And this is basically just for 1 year. Of course, now it's been 2.5 years. So most of the tree cover in Gaza is gone. We have a new study actually looking at habitats. Habitats for endangered species are between basically 94% to 100%, depending on the endangered species we look at in terms of habitat destruction. This is greenhouses destroyed in the Gaza Strip. You can also talk about medicide in Gaza, by the way, destruction of hospitals and how the environmental health of the population is devastated, etc. Destruction of religious areas and museums and so forth. This is, by the way, because I'm in Bethlehem, my family is Christian. I show these pictures to remind people that this is Bethlehem where Jesus was born. And if you want what Jesus looks like and what his mother looked like, it would be like that woman in Gaza. This is in the 2014 attack on Gaza when her house was destroyed. This woman has since been martyred in this war. And this is another picture illustrate the same thing, what Mother Mary would have looked like, if you want. In the last few minutes, I just want to tell you, if I go back to the medical analogy, and we understand the symptoms as ecocide, genocide, scholasticide, veriticide, medicide, and so on, and we understand the diagnosis as colonialism. Patient history, by the way, this is new. This is a new illness for us. It's not that there's a congenital problem in Palestine. Actually, if you take the last 5,000 years since the invention of writing here, by the way, the ABC came from here. They are modified Aramaic alphabet that our ancestors invented. Since the invention of the alphabet and the writing, we can look at our history for 5,000 years very clearly and see how many wars we had, how many conflicts, how many colonization attempts. And you will find that actually this country is one of the most peaceful countries on earth as a percentage of our long, long history. In the United States, for example, its history of 250 years, I think they've had only 20 years where they were not engaged in a war somewhere. So France, England, any country you choose, Italy, if you look at its history from the recorded history, as a percentage of its engagement in wars, would be higher than us. So this indicates that the illness we have is curable. It's not congenital, okay? So what to do about it? This is the important part. This is what we come to therapy and prognosis. Well, I'll say about prognosis a couple of words. There's only three scenarios for colonial, anti-colonial struggles. There's a scenario of what happened in Algeria, where 1 million French left the country, against their will, obviously. Many of them never seen France in their lives. They were 6, 7 generations in Algeria, 8 generations. And they had to go. And it was very bloody, cost, depending on who you ask, between 1 to 2 million Algerian lives. This is one scenario. The second scenario is what happened in Australia and the United States. And that's large-scale genocide of the local people, leaving so few of them, 1 or 2% of the population, quote-unquote, manageable situation. The third scenario, the most common scenario, by the way, found by my count in 170 some countries, and that's where the descendants of the colonizers and the descendants of the colonized live together in one country. These are the three choices, by the way. There's no fourth choice. There's no quote-unquote two-state solution to a colonial, anti-colonial struggle. Never happened in history and will never happen in the future. And if you want to know why, you can read my book called Sharing the Land of Canaan to understand why. Having dispensed with prognosis, prognosis is since 98% of the countries ended with that third scenario, this is what should end up this patient, if you want. So what's a therapy? And the therapy should address all the items I covered as symptoms by treating the underlying cause, right? This is how it happens in medicine. If I go to a doctor and I have cancer and I have symptoms like a headache and anemia and I don't know, skin rash, and the doctor says, well, let me just give you a cream for the skin rash and an aspirin for the headache and whatever, then he's not treating me, or she would be killing me. They have to treat the underlying etiology or cause or the cancer. The same thing for this thing. Colonizers, what do they aim for? And we should aim for the opposite of that. Colonizers are against biological diversity and against human diversity. How many tribes were in North America, for example? How many languages in Australia? You can think about that. So they are against human diversity, against biological diversity. We who have to struggle against that have to be for biological diversity and for human diversity. And we have to work for that. That's a cure for, that's a process of what we call decolonization, even though I don't use this term in my writings too much because it implies that my focus is on the colon. My focus is what is the vision of what we want and how do we build it. Hence, our institute, the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability, has a vision of sustainable human and natural communities. And our mission includes research, education, conservation, and community service. Our motto is respect, first for ourselves. As indigenous people, we can change our own circumstances with help from others, fine. That's empowerment. Respect for ourselves, respect for others, regardless of a religion or political background or history or whatever, gender, whatever, and respect for nature, the animals, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, the soil, what we, the indigenous people, call Mother Earth, right? The colonizers never used these terminologies. So this is what we aim for, and we work on this via many programs. I won't bore you with detail about this. Is a drone image of the facilities we have, greenhouses, buildings, museum. We work with children a lot. We have Museum of Natural History. We have Museum of Ethnography. We do research in the field, even though this is becoming increasingly difficult because our ghetto gates are being closed more frequently, and now they are sealed, basically. But anyway, we do what we can. When things are open, we go collect, study, preserve, work with children, educate children about the environment. We have the children explore our garden, produce from trash some gifts, for example. Always touching, feeling, exploring. We have summer camps of exploration. This is in the Museum of Natural History. The picture showing the new museum, actually, that's now we are building also. But children help us. We have events, workshops. We work on national strategies, even though we cannot implement them because we don't have sovereignty. We set up the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Again, we cannot implement most of it because we are under colonial occupation. We have We have an animal rehabilitation unit. We see one of the international volunteers with a baby hyena that we rehabilitated and released. We have ex situ and in situ conservation of rare plants and animals. We have a group called Palestine Action for the Planet, which works with the Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg and that group, to challenge the climate change issues as much as we can. And we do community service also, like teaching women. This is some of our women trainers training other women how to make products and even how to sell them, market their products of food and others, cosmetics, whatever. We have a community garden. We have produced some of our own food. This is food sovereignty is very important in such situations. These are some children helping us pick olives. And we rely a lot on volunteers. We had more than 600 volunteers in 10 years. The volunteers represent 80% of our labor. Me and my wife are full-time volunteers here, working, 14, 15, 16, sometimes hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't have much support, institutional or government or anything else. We rely on donations. This is what some of the volunteers do. So come volunteer with us if you like. We have good food, much of it from our garden and stuff. And can work in the garden. You can work with our team. These are just some pictures of our team members. Me and my wife are the elders, if you want. This is the new museum that we are now building, a design of it, what it looks like. And this is our website, palestinenature.org. And you can email me at info@palestinenature.org. I'd love to get your email and add you to our email list so that you can receive our weekly activism note. So I'm happy to discuss any subjects you want to discuss on what I talked about. Thank you. And there is plenty of time. I see I finished in 30 minutes or 31 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Qumsiyeh. That was a very powerful presentation. Um, and I have collected a few questions for you. I'll start with this one. You mentioned settler colonialism, and I'm just curious also to explore the concept of how this particular type of colonialism, which is different to the one that countries like India with the British Empire experienced, is about a structure rather than a single event. And it is intent in erasing the indigenous population, like you mentioned. The United States, Australia, New Zealand, Canada are examples of these types of structures and colonialism. And I was wondering if you could speak about that structure and how it can be dismantled or weakened in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually whole departments in universities these days. Post-colonial studies is a well-established field of research and writing, and there are thousands of books about decolonization, about colonization, and how to challenge colonization, resistance, etc. I wrote a book, for example, about popular resistance in Palestine. But if you want, this is one of thousands and thousands of books related to resistance and issues of resistance. There's Frantz Fanon, for example, wrote a very good book called The Wretched of the Earth. So it's it's hard for me to answer such a question that, there's a huge body of literature on it. But if I was just to try and come up with a few words that would make sense in this context, I think what I said earlier is that colonization has an agenda. You have to identify this agenda and do the opposite of this agenda. The agenda is to destroy human diversity and destroy biological diversity. So our agenda is how to promote human diversity and biological diversity, and how to expose the agenda of the colonizers and challenge it. How do we do that? What's the mechanism? What's the process? Obviously, truth telling is part of it. In South Africa, there were other tools they used, like boycott, divestment, sanctions, international mobilization, media work, international support. All these things, direct support, like happened with progressive forces when they went to Spain to help fight a fascist dictator in Spain, international fighting with the local people. There's groups that also try to develop self-sustenance and self-reliance, like the Zapatistas in Mexico, or the Rojava in northern Syria, or others. There's Tamera in Portugal, for example, a self-sustaining community, intentional communities that try to step away from consumerist capitalist societies that are devastating our planet. There's thousands and thousands of tools and methods that people have used and continue to use to do this. We face unfortunately, we face an enemy who's very, very rich and powerful. That's how they got rich and powerful, is making the poor get poorer and the rich get richer by exploiting our natural resources, destroying our planet, and making us fight each other. This is their agenda, and so the billionaire class now, and soon to be the trillionaire class. Elon Musk is slated to be the first human trillionaire with $1 trillion worth of assets. Something that boggles the mind. He already has something like $500 billion. That's enough to make the planet green and cure world hunger together, one person. And he happens to be also a racist, but that's natural. He made the Nazi salute, with Trump, So I think that's their agenda. Their agenda is to get richer and to exploit people. And the Epstein debacle is, is a clear, the best illustration of this, if you want. Honey traps that the Israeli intelligence used to make sure that Trump and those people and Bill Gates and others, billionaires, have to do what Israel wants, what Zionism wants. So what we have to do is just keep working, push harder, educate, spread the word, coordinate efforts. We are the many, they are the few. So if we coordinate enough, the biggest enemy for us is not those, racist bigots, capitalists. It's the biggest enemy is apathy. That there's a lot of people who, either out of ignorance or because they don't care, just shrug their shoulders and say, I'm just this little lonely guy. What am I going to do? This is the biggest problem that we face, and that's why we have to educate and mobilize.
Yeah, and I think your work is very much doing that and it's very inspiring. I'm also curious to learn, you mentioned and shared some photos of how local communities are able to participate in biodiversity conservation under the current conditions. And would like to hear more about the ways in which that's being challenged further and how you're finding ways to overcome those challenges.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why we thought museums and botanic gardens and so forth to attract children for extracurricular, basically, activities because the young generation, the new generation, is the future. That's who you have to ensure that they are not doing what the rich guys want them to do. The rich guys want them to do what? To basically be enslaved to consumerism and to think, when September 11, 2001 happened, I was in the United States at the time. And George Bush came and gave his first speech after this horrific attack, which is still to be investigated, really needs to be investigated by an independent commission. But anyway, um, so what did he say to the American public? This just illustrates what we are up against. He said to the American public, we are going to go after these guys that committed those, wherever they are, and we're going to kill them. And what I want you to do, the American public, is speaking to the American public, what I want you to do is go shopping. This is literally what he said, go shopping. Keep the economy going by going shopping. He's encouraging them to be even more consumers instead of involved citizens, instead of telling them, go get educated, find out what's going on in that part of the world that supposedly we say that those guys came from. Let's investigate, let's get educated, let's get involved, make gatherings, make educational events about things, about value of life, all of this stuff. So we fight terrorism by education, by spreading knowledge, by whatever. No, he said, go shopping. This illustrates to you the mentality of the millionaires and billionaires that we are dealing with. Is they want us uninvolved. They want us to be non-citizens, but merely robots, basically zombies, doing whatever they want us to do, whatever. And now, of course, why is the immigrant thing in the US? Immigrants have never been a threat to the US. In fact, the US economy is based on immigrants. Without immigrants, and I'm a US citizen, I was an immigrant. So what? Now I don't live in the US, thank God. But anyways, Trumpistan, it's a kingdom, not a whatever. I mean, but anyways, uh, it was, it was built on immigrants. All the PhD students that were studying with me in the US, if you look at scientific output of the US, most of it is done by immigrants. So what is this about against immigrants? And we are a white Christian nation, and you have Hegseth, who is tattooed on his body Crusader symbols, being secretary, used to be called Secretary of Defense, and now is called Secretary of War. This is an official decision. You think about this, and you think about what we are up against, and you do again the opposite of what they want us to do. And the opposite is to get involved, educate our children, plant trees, fight climate change, walk, use bicycles, don't consume fossil fuels as much as reasonably possible. This is what we have to do. We have to rebel. And if we don't rebel, we're doomed as a species, not, even the children of those rich people. Where are they going to live? Elon Musk is, the SpaceX, maybe he thinks he and his buddies will go live on Mars, because he can afford to go to Mars. What is this? It's ridiculous what they are driving us to. Global war, global nuclear war. We're now, according to the latest atomic clock, we're 85 seconds from midnight to global nuclear war. And if we go in that direction, if it happens, I'm afraid, the only winners are not humans. They're going to be cockroaches because they're resistant to radiation and they'll be feeding off of our dead bodies. Maybe that's not a bad thing as a biologist. Humans had their chance and they screwed it up, so might as well let other species get their chance. Earth will continue, humans will not.
Yeah, very, very strange times. So I want to also highlight that as an agroecologist, I also value diversity, agroecologically, human, culturally, linguistically. So I appreciate you naming that as like a method for addressing the current plethora of challenges we are experiencing. Um, I also wanted to ask you about there have been documented cases of herbicide spraying, including glyphosate, along the border of Gaza to clear vegetation. As I mentioned, as an agroecologist, I do also think about this region as the Fertile Crescent and like a site for agriculture and biodiversity, the cradle of that. So, could you speak about the ecological and agricultural consequences of these practices for local ecosystems, biodiversity, and the food sovereignty of Palestinian peoples?
I think the use of herbicides and things like that, chemical warfare is probably the best description of these things. It's not new. Think of Agent Orange that the US used in Vietnam, for example, how devastating it was, not just to the environment and the tree cover and the plants and the rich biodiversity that was in Vietnam before, but also to the human population with cancer, even American servicemen who developed cancer um, as a result of this. So this is par for the course, again, as a par for the course of the oppressors to use all tools at their disposal to destroy, damage, kill, whatever. I just finished a 7-week course. I'm very busy, but I took time to study this 7-week course on remediation, soil remediation, restoration against, for the war in Gaza. Of course, we don't know much of the damage in Gaza. I showed you some examples of things we could do with remote sensing, but we don't have access to get soil samples there. We got access to get soil samples in Beirut and sent them to laboratories, and they analyzed them and found radiation, radioisotopes that are not supposed to be there, and other, heavy metals and so on. But because Israel used the same weapons in Beirut as they used in Gaza, so we expect the same things. So we need to study these things. We need to research them to understand the impact of these things, whether it's herbicides they use or whatever. This needs a lot of research. I find my biggest limitation is people who understand the urgency of doing such research, because that research is also the underpinning of any remediation action you need to take. And then you need to go to remediation. You cannot just say, what can I do? Again, it's people have to act. And I think we need to make them see the urgency of this and the urgency of research and study. And I'm giving, this is my second talk today, and there's still one more talk at 9 o'clock p.m. our time, so in about 2 hours. Part of the reason why I feel the urgency to do these things and to speak out is precisely that, because I need people to know this is not going to impact just Palestinians and Israelis, by the way. I mean, heck, even because Israel destroyed sewage treatment facilities in Gaza and prevents electricity to Gaza, and you cannot operate, even if the sewage treatment facilities are functioning, you cannot operate them without electricity. So what happens to the sewage of Gaza? It's dumped into the Mediterranean Sea. Is this just polluting the sea for the people of Gaza? Of course not. It's polluting the whole Eastern Mediterranean region. And because of the currents, actually, from the Suez Canal and so forth, the water comes up to Jaffa and Tel Aviv. So Israelis are literally swimming in the shit of Gaza because because of Zionism and colonialism and greed of the billionaires. This is how crazy it is. And I think we need to tell people this, and we need to emphasize it, and we need to be not shy about describing these horrors.
Yeah, thanks for your bravery. So, um, as members of the academic community and organizations like the International Society for Ecological Economics, what role can scholars and researchers play in addressing the ecocide and all the, sites that you mentioned that are happening on the ground, to address the broader social ecological degradation of this moment?
Very good question. I think, everybody can contribute even in their own specialized area of interest. If you have some scientists and others who are interested in ecology or climate change or habitat destruction or marine biology or whatever, they have a great opportunity to do both advanced science for their own even well-being, their CVs, developing their CVs, but do it in an applied research setting that relates to these things. So a marine biologist could start to look into the pollution in the Mediterranean Sea. And they want, I have friends in Tel Aviv, they can take samples from the water if they want to see what chemicals and radioactive substances and other things are there, what fecal material from Gaza is in the sea in Tel Aviv. I'm just giving a random example here. Environmental DNA or whatever, molecular biologists can work in these areas. Satellite imagery, GIS, remote sensing, all of these things can be done. Restoration, soil biology. So people can work with us. We are happy to collaborate, and they can collaborate remotely. They don't have to come here if they feel unsafe here, even though I now have 4 international volunteers. They were text messaging me that dinner is ready. But anyways, 4 international volunteers from 4 different countries are here, and I'm working on one paper actually now, finishing it to submit tonight with this one volunteer who's from Ireland, about Gaza actually, and why Gaza has become an international issue and a global war that's starting, soon. Well, started with this regional war between Iran on one side and Israel and the US on the other side. China and Russia are probably going to get into it soon if they're not already in it and underground. But anyways, we'll see what happens. But people need to write about these things, research those things, and come volunteer with us if you like to come, or volunteer remotely. Um, as I said, you can write to me at info@palestinenature.org, and I can send you the links to how to volunteer, and you can tell me your background. I can tell you what research you can do, what areas you can help with, which is for the planet. I'm not talking about, I don't want you to work because Palestine. For me, there was genocide in Rwanda, there's genocide in Sudan, there's genocide in other places. But Palestine is important because Palestine working here undermines, it's the Achilles heel of Western hypocrisy. Palestine is the Achilles heel of Western hypocrisy about human rights, about international law, about ecocide. When you think about the American military, they just said that in the first few days of this war on Iran, 3 or 4 days, they have spent munitions $5.5 billion. A very simple calculation. What are the munitions they are using? Divide the munitions by each of those. You get how much each one costs, like those 1-ton bombs they dropped. But more importantly, you can calculate how much environmental damage from each of those bombs and from the jet fuels, because there's 24,000 whatever bombs dropped. Then how much ecological damage it produced. That's an interesting research that can be done, on the back of an envelope and calculations and publish a paper on it. I think people, and it helps public understand that this is not a problem of just some Iranians, which we don't care about because we were conditioned not to care about other people, brown skinned people, or to even hate them. Uh, but even if you don't care about brown skinned Iranian Muslims, they think Iranians are Muslims, Shia, but Iran is multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious society. But anyway, even if we don't care about them, we should care about the pollution that's being produced. We should care that the US and Israel bombed all refineries and oil depots. Billions of cubic meters of gases are being pumped into the air. What was this going to just stay within the borders of Iran? You know,
Yes, this is a very good point, how we're also interconnected through the economics, through the biosphere. Very relevant to the type of work that a lot of ecological economics scholars are doing. I wanted to thank you, Dr. Qumsiyeh, for sharing your work and your insights with us. Um, Please do share your links and your information so that we can post them, so that people can get in touch with you about ways to support through research and also through donations. You mentioned that you have a place that people can donate to your efforts and your research and the work that you're doing that's so necessary and important. So, on behalf of the International Society for Ecological Economics, we appreciate your participation and hope to continue to support your work and these conversations about environmental justice and ecological futures.
thank you so much for having me, and for your attention and for your action, and most importantly, for being who you are, caring human beings.
Thank you as well, and I hope you have a good dinner.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Send me the link when you have it, by the way. If you have a link or you put it on the website somewhere, I'd love to get the link.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll share that with you.
Okay. Take care.
You too. Thank
Okay.
you.